Janice. Next up this afternoon, we are hearing from a synth pop trailblazer who changed the face and sound of pop music in bands including Depeche Mode, Yazoo and Erasure. He has always thrived in collaboration, whether with those brilliant groups or his musical unions with The Assembly, with Fergal Sharkey, or in cahoots with the Human League's Martin Ware in the Clarke and Ware experiment. But Vince Clarke is always one for pushing boundaries, and he has just released his first solo album. It's a gorgeous instrumental meditation called Songs of Silence. And when Janice Forsyth spoke to Vince a few weeks back, she started by asking him whether that title was a nod to Simon and Garfunkel.
Well, the title certainly, yeah, but also, I mean, it's very literal, isn't it? I mean, it's mostly an album of instrumental tracks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought of the title. I've been thinking about that title for a while, and when I completed this project, and it was decided that it would actually come out as a record, then I thought, well, this is karma. This works.
It certainly does. And this is the thing, because for many people, especially fans of Erasure, of course, this could not be more different. But I think there's lots to admire here, because, for example, looking, I think it might be in the Lamentations of Jeremiah, the video there, you're absolutely embracing your own age. You're not shot in any kind of like flattering way. It's monochrome, and I just wondered how important that was for you to go for that kind of vibe with this record and with the videos.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to. I see the album as almost like a documentary, really, and I like the idea of having the images in that documentary style, very black and white, very stark, and not hiding any of the lines.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of the images and videos that Erasure have done, you know, are often a little whimsical. I wanted for this album to be very different and markedly different from those records.
Yeah. The thing is, you have done, I mean, not anything similar, but you have been experimental over the years in terms of, you know, a more minimalist vibe. I mean, you're interested in all different kinds of music, aren't you?
Yes. I mean, certainly. I mean, I think a friend here in the States and I were doing a radio show on a community radio station for a few years, and that was a 2-hour show, but that was all electronic music, and that was really an opportunity for me to actually discover this genre.
Yeah.
And you know, I discovered lots of interesting bands or artists and interesting music that we would stick in. We had 2 hours to fill, you know, so
yes.
Then I started coming across all of this interesting experimental electronic music, and it's what really started the whole thing.
That is so interesting. For me, actually, a voyage of discovery for me was Bob Dylan's Radio Music Hour, where I discovered so many extraordinary tracks. But what was so joyous was his extreme enthusiasm when he was discussing the music. And I think in a way that also, you know, it's kind of like parallel with what we're talking about with you. It's kind of like a bit of a voyage of discovery for you too, with us talking about that 2-hour radio show where you just make new discoveries. I think that's got to be good for any artist.
Yeah, I mean, and also, you know, to be really honest, I mean, up to that point, I hadn't really been listening to new music.
Yeah,
and I was so focused in on Erasure records and Erasure songwriting. But this was an opportunity to find out that there's this whole world out there. I mean, ambient music or this type of music has evolved so much. You know, it's not like it used to be. I mean, 10 or 20 years ago, I always considered ambient music to be like the sounds of whales doing their thing, or the sounds of the sea running against the beach, you know. But it's really evolved, I think, and it's become much more interesting.
Yeah. Had you been thinking of making it, because this is your debut solo record, had you thought about this for a while, or just did circumstances come together to make this the right time to do it?
Well, I wasn't actually thinking about making a record at all.
Right.
You know, I just, during lockdown, I started experimenting, making tracks and making music. I mean, it was never my intention for it to be released. I was doing it for my own sanity, and also I was doing it because I wanted to learn new techniques and new equipment. So it was really just a collection of experiments. I mean, every track's on the record, you know, or the tracks that I originally composed were all just called Drone 1, Drone 2, Drone 3, Drone 4. It wasn't until the record company suggested that it might be an album that I had to start thinking about titles.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it became a kind of a real thing as opposed to just a project.
Yes. And tell me about your approach to it then, because I believe that every track in the album comes with rules attached? I don't even know what that means. I'm just reading this out. Tell us a bit more about that.
Well, one of the problems with having a studio full of toys, I found, for me, is that I won't ever stop.
Yeah.
Because there are so many choices, and I can spend hours or days or weeks in the studio just fiddling about.
I'll bet.
And so it's quite useful to have rules. So one of the rules on this record, in my head, was to just rely on each track to be in one key. Mm-hmm. So that I wasn't using chord changes as you would in a traditional songwriting scenario to make the song dramatic. Instead, I was using textures, and then I would be listening to these tracks very intensely, and I would go, okay, like 45 seconds or something needs to happen, an event needs to happen, some audio event needs to happen, and I'll experiment and try doing something like that. So instead of the track being marked by choruses and verses and bridges, it was marked by textural changes.
Yeah. I'm imagining this was both challenging but also at times liberating to be experimenting in such a different way.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love the process. I mean, to be honest, I enjoy the process of actually doing it more than I do the rest of the stuff that goes with releasing a record.
The videos are pretty cool, though. I think you're embracing your inner Samuel Beckett with those.
Absolutely.
They work so well. I just wonder for you, in terms of the process and the sound of the album, it is something very bold to do, but presumably with something like this at your age and stage in your career, that's something you have the freedom to do. I mean, I wonder if you're wondering about what fans might think about it, or is that way madness lie? You just go on and do your thing.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, when I made this, and in all Erasure records, when we start writing songs, we don't really consider what other people might think about it.
Yeah.
It's the most important person to please is us or me.
Yeah.
And if I find the track or the song satisfying, then we're just grateful or hopeful and grateful that there are other people out there that appreciate that also and they kind of get it, so.
Yeah.
But I'm in a very privileged position. I mean, we have a very supportive record company.
Yeah.
And, I'm very lucky to be in that position, I think.
Yeah. And what was it like, the idea of just doing this as a solo project, relying entirely on yourself? There's no one to kind of come in and say, like a producer or anybody else or a collaborator to say, right, stop this now or change it or whatever. So how was that for you?
It was a bit scary, to be honest. I mean, I think I wrote 15 or 16 tracks. Mm-hmm. Then I sent them to the record company, to the guy that runs the record label, just as a friend, really, because he had just asked me what I was up to. And I said I was doing this stuff. And he came back and said, because I'm thinking, okay, if he wants to release it as a record, it's going to need to be mixed. It's going to need to be produced. Yeah. But he just came back and said, I think it sounds good as it is, as it stands. So that was very flattering, actually, in a way,
It's got to be somebody you trust, though, isn't it? That it's not just flattery. They're like, no, really, this is genuinely what I think. Absolutely.
I mean, when Daniel said to me, this is the guy that runs the label, when Daniel said to me he wants to release it as a record, I thought he was joking. I thought he was feeling sorry for me. And then it wasn't until the art person who works for the record company got involved and started talking about artwork, and I thought, oh my God, they are really going to release this as a record, yeah. Exactly.
I like your lack of ego. That's very funny. And there's an homage to Joy Division in Last Transmission. Tell us about that, why you wanted to do that, pay respect to them.
Well, as I said earlier, the tracks didn't have any titles in the beginning. I mean, number one, I love that word. I love that record, of course, Yeah. That was one of the very first records I ever bought. But also I was watching a movie about a man that was left on Mars, and at the end of the film, the guy gets rescued, but he was like the last man on Mars. Yeah. And no one could communicate with this guy. There was no way for him to communicate with Earth and let them know that he was alive and that he could be rescued. So that became the inspiration behind that track, or the inspiration behind the title track, I should say.
There is one track which has words on it, Blackleg. Can you tell us a wee bit about that? The sample in that song, it's really interesting.
Yeah, so do you know what Blackleg is, right?
Yes.
Yes, so many years ago, Martin Ware from Heaven 17 and I were we were doing music for art installations. And he just happened to send me this a cappella sample and said, maybe we can make something of this, or maybe you can try and make something of this. And I spent years trying to turn it into a song, into something interesting. And I couldn't. And then I had this one backing track, and I thought, I'm going to dig up that old sample and see if it fits. And it was one of the, this is the honest truth, I didn't tune the vocal, I didn't have to pitch it, I didn't have to time it. It just sat on top of the backing track like absolutely perfectly.
Wow.
And when those things happen, you go, well, this is karma.
Yeah, it's meant to be.
This is meant to be, yeah.
It's so interesting because it's a sample of an old male singer, performing the 19th century Northumbrian song Black Leg Miner, as you say, Black Leg. So the whole idea of, you do not strike break. So this particular one's talking about invoking violence against strike breakers. So tell me a wee bit about, finding that.
I placed it in the track and it became a song, so to speak. And I started looking into the history of the whole Black Leg episode. Mm-hmm. And you're right. I mean, the lyrics are very violent. And the song has been covered before, but oftentimes people would cover the song and they would take out the more violent lyrics.
Yeah.
But I wanted to include them because it just felt right. I mean, I didn't do the song as a political statement. I did the song as a historical story.
Yes.
That was the way I thought about it.
Yeah. And just thinking about previous work, because you also worked, of course, with Jean-Michel Jarre on his album Electronica 1, The Time Machine. I'm wondering, did you naturally sort of soak up anything from him that pops up, whatever, subconscious way or whatever, in this album, or not?
It's very weird. I mean, people ask me about who influences me and what I'm affected by, but, it's very hard to be specific.
I know, yeah.
I think, if you've been listening to music for a long, long time and, you're listening to all kinds of genres, all kinds of styles, then these things are bound to come up in the compositions that you make. For instance, with this record, had I decided to do these tracks and I was, spending a couple of months on a beach in Jamaica, it would have probably sounded a lot different.
Yeah.
You're obviously affected and influenced by all of the things around you.
Yeah. And you're going to be performing the entire album for its launch party in London. I was quite surprised with that. I was thinking, right, you're performing the album, because it is something quite different, but that sounds very cool. Would you like to tour it as well?
I don't know. The idea of the show in London, it's not a concert so much. It's going to we're going to incorporate a lot of visual stuff. It's not music with visuals, it's visuals with music.
Yeah.
It'll be more of a kind of a gallery experience, more immersive. And, hopefully if it goes well, or, and people don't ask for their money back after the show, then we won't tour it, but we would certainly like to perform it in other places.
Great. Vince, it's such a treat to talk to you. I've been so intrigued by this album, and I think it's a very beautiful thing and really good to speak to you. Thanks for talking to me today. All the best.
Thanks, Janice.
Oh, there you go. The lovely, lovely Vince Clarke talking to the equally lovely Janice Forsyth a few weeks ago. Come to Scotland, Vince. Get a gig going up here. And his solo album, Songs of Silence, is out now.